BRUCAST is back, baby.
It didn't.
It
In
didn't?
science,
Okay.
we don't. How to say that? As soon as you've reached just basic level in science, you know perfectly well that we are not the only ones in the universe. It's not possible. It would be, seriously, it would be an act of God. It would be a proof of God that we would be alone in the universe. That is so uncanny towards anything we know in science that it would be probably a proof that there is a God somewhere. Because everything we look at in the universe really, really looks like what we see in the solar system. So to be the only one to have life, that would be extremely strange. Extremely strange. So what surprised me, what bothered me, was the silence of academics, the silence of governments, the silence of intelligence service about this. Because it is still a major sociological, scientific, national security topic. And to have it hidden for 70 years, that's what really bothered me. That's what points me towards, so much silence means they don't really know what it is, in my point of view.
So because they don't know what it is, they just cover it up.
But the problem is that when you know what it is, you can create a strategy to talk about it or to hide it completely. Neither is active right now. So I think that if someone knows everything about it, and I doubt that very much on Earth, it's a very, very small group of people that don't have all the means they need to control the situation. And that's why we have so much silence.
Yes, I think there has been a lot of silence for a long time. But if I'm not mistaken, recently Space Force shared this information that we will be facing space threats soon. So they're talking about it, but in a bad way, like we should be afraid of it.
No, it's double speak. They mean space wars behind Russia, China, and themselves. That's what they mean by space threats. So you have a very old treaty that forbids you to put weapons in space. You can have ground-based weapons, but you can't have weapons that are stationary in space. Right now, that is the treaty that is being breached, because China wants to have its part of the moon, wants to have its part of Mars, wants to have its part of the solar system. Russia wants its own parts too, and US would like to have control about everything that is happening. So there will be, and I'm pretty sure it has already been done, that there will be space-based weapons that will be launched in space by the three majors on the subject. And when they talk about space threats, it's literally right now spy satellites that are literally pirating, going close to other satellites and intercepting communications towards them, or removing them from orbit and destroying them. Wow. So that's the Cold War that is happening right now in space. Of course, it is double speak. So everything they say about terrestrial, Earth-like threats can be applied to something that wouldn't come from Earth.
I see. Okay. What was so the whole point of creating Space Force to begin with was to prevent or fight those conflicts between humans then? Was not...
Oh, yes.
Okay. When I first heard about Space Force, for me it was, okay, we need to prepare for the aliens. The aliens are coming. Well, it felt like a joke, to be honest, when I first heard that they were creating...
It was made as a joke by the other army corps that didn't want to have a Space Force because it meant less funding for them. Okay. It meant that the Air Force has to divide its budget to give it to a Space Force, so every part of the US military was against. But it was very much for terrestrial application.
I see. Isn't there a Netflix show called Space Force? I think there is.
Yes, with Steve Carell, I think.
Exactly.
I looked at it. And I liked it. The last scene with the Chinese and the Americans on the moon crossing each other, pretty funny scene.
So is it safe to say that other countries also have their own Space Force? Or they're planning on creating one?
It depends, because first you need to have access to space, and all countries on Earth don't have access to space. So, but what we saw, well, there was always a Space Force, just that it was inside other departments. So since the US proclaimed that they created a specific Space Force, the other countries, to let people know that they had also a Space Force, said, we are creating a Space Force, that it was already existing. For example, ICBM, so thermonuclear missiles that can cross the whole Earth in a few minutes, are technically not space-based weapons because they are launched from the ground, but they go through space to then hit the target. Yeah. So you need to have a Space Force to locate the launch of this missile because it's the only moment when you can intercept it. If you want to intercept it, you need to have countermeasures in space ready to intercept it, so you need to have space-based weapons. So it's all a game of cloak and daggers at that point.
Got it. Whoa, but I think they will have to make a cleanup. From last news that I saw, like there was so much trash in space, so much dead satellites and stuff like that.
yeah, that's very true. But we are talking very low orbits, so you need to have much higher orbits for satellites, and your ICBM can go through the first layer of the atmosphere without problem.
I see. Going back to this book, I'm very interested about this book. Unconventional Flying Objects, a former NASA scientist explains how UFOs really work. So you read the book.
Yeah.
How UFOs work? How do they work? If it's explained.
So the problem he had at the time, so he died in 94, if I remember well, something like that.
Okay.
Is that he didn't have all the quantum technology we have right now.
I see.
So he was limited by the state of knowledge at the time, but he could explain most of how it worked. The problem was the power output. So if you try to calculate how much UFO weighs, and we can do that because when they land on the ground, they leave an imprint, a trace on the ground, and by measuring the depth of the ground and the hardness of the ground, you can know the weight of the object. And then when it moves, you have a weight, so you can know by the speed of the movement, the amount of energy it is required to move the object. And when you put everything into the formula, the power output is just ridiculous. It's like one thermonuclear explosion per second to achieve that level of output of energy. And that was the problem of Paul Hill. He could explain pretty much how it worked, every type of technology that was seen. The problem is, how do you achieve such an amount of power in such a small craft? And that was really its problem. And it's still something we have some ideas of how you can do it, but we are 1,000 years away from that level of technology.
I see. So he managed.
It's really an engineer problem. So we have the ideas of how to do it, but we need 10 project Manhattans to create such a powerhouse of fuel efficiency.
Mm-hmm. I see. So Paul basically deciphered. He managed to grasp a little bit of the science behind it, but still, it's not enough to do our technology. Is still not enough to recreate it, right? I see.
The technology known by a NASA engineer in 94.
94. Okay.
We don't know what has been made in secret.
Of course, yeah. The military technology is always some years ahead of the public one, right?
A good century.
Yeah. A good century, you'd say? Wow.
Oh, yes, between a military prototype on the top of. When you see what they call a military prototype, it's because it has been discovered by other intelligence service. So the cost of keeping it hidden while everybody knows about it is ridiculous. So they just release a new prototype. But as long as the new technology isn't discovered, it stays hidden.
Couldn't be UFO something like that?
There are reports that some type of inspired craft made by the same way Paul Hill did, by looking at UFOs and just wondering how does that thing fly, and just thinking about it can inspire you to create crafts that looks like UFOs, are very poor performance compared to UFOs, but are still beating everything you have on Earth.
I see. What if just a huge what if? We don't need actually 100 Project Manhattans or anything like that. We just need to discover a new type of science, a new type of technology. Something that I hear over and over on those conspiracy theory YouTube videos is like, there's this hidden technology, the vibration technology that we just didn't master it yet. And I hear that and get all excited. Wow! Watch full episodes of the BRUCAST on the main YouTube channel, youtube.com/@BrewFrasca.